All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. Let's quickly shift to another major story here ahead of a important midterm season as primaries taking place in several states. The most important one, the most one we focused on out of Texas, and including the Texas Senate race, as we do know at least one name that will be on the ticket come November. That's the Democratic primary, as it's James Talarico in a major win over the Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. A live look there at what's expected to be a victory speech for Talerico in Austin, Texas, in about half an hour or so. He did make some remarks last night. That was before it was called in favor of him. And this was the result at the end of the night. As you can see there, the results 53-46, a 7-point victory. Over about 100 and so thousand votes ahead of Jasmine Crockett in this race. James Talarico taking it. On the other side, there will be a runoff heading into May as the incumbent John Cornyn leads by just a single point, less than 25,000 votes between him and Attorney General Ken Paxton. Wesley Hunt not in the race. We'll see where that 14% ends up. All right, let's continue on here on Live Now from Fox. Bring into the conversation congressional reporter for the Washington Examiner, Lauren Green. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. You were in Austin at that Talerico watch party last night. There was some controversy, and it was late into the evening. We're expecting a victory speech today, but how significant is it that Talerico, the state rep, will be on the ballot? How big of a movement does he have behind him?
I mean, even just talking to supporters last night, I wasn't even talking to a couple of them, and some of them were just next to me, and they were talking about how sad they were going to be if the campaign ended, not only because Talerico lost, but because they gained such a community through it. I did a story last week about how Talerico has provided kind of an outlet for a faction of Democrats and a faction of independents and even some Republicans who have felt left out of the Democratic Party. I talked to somebody who was a former Republican who voted for Talerico in this primary at his rally on Sunday. And so I just think that it was a pretty big landslide victory for Talerico. Jasmine Crockett had very high name recognition. She has been all over the media in recent years. She was a big name in Texas from Dallas, which is a huge city. And so I do think that Talerico had to run a massive operation campaign to have this victory. Polling, like we've talked about, was all over the place for this race before. Congresswoman Crockett was up in most of the polls, but Talerico really did. This victory was pretty big. If anything, I think a lot of people thought that Talerico's victory was going to be kind of narrow, but it was a lot wider than I think a lot of people expected.
And it could have been a little bit more narrow because we're talking about some of the controversy last night, some of the confusion with the polling location, not necessarily a unified primary, but earlier on this morning, it was a concession from Jasmine Crockett, the Congresswoman, the lightning rod representative, saying this morning called James, congratulated him on becoming the Senate nominee. Texas, it primed to turn blue, and we must remain united because this is bigger than any one person. This is about the future of all 30 million Texans and getting America back on track. With the primary behind us, Democrats must rally around our nominee and win. I'm committed to doing my part and will continue working to elect Democrats up and down the ballot. And that certainly feels big of her to, after confusion, some controversy, they were thinking about legal matters to back James Talarico. And I do want to just cut us off a little bit because we see the man himself stepping on the stage for this victory speech. Lauren, hang on with us. Let's listen into this live.
Thank you, Hilda. Thank you all for being here. One thing is clear today. We're about to take back Texas. To the billionaires who have taken over our state and taken over our country, your unchecked power is coming to an end. Your days dividing working people are numbered. To the people of Texas, no matter how you voted in the primary, this election is our chance to take power back for ourselves and our communities. We're done being divided. We're done being played. We're done being pitted against each other. That old politics is dying, and a new politics is being born through all of us. I want to start off by thanking Congresswoman Crockett. She is a colleague and a friend. I am so grateful for her voice and her leadership. It was an honor to run this race with her. To the Congresswoman's supporters, I know I wasn't your first choice, but I hope to earn your trust and earn your support. As your Democratic nominee, it's on me to ensure you feel welcomed in, represented by, and proud of this campaign. Together, we're going to do something extraordinary. We launched this underdog campaign 6 months ago in my hometown of Round Rock, Texas. And since then, tens of thousands of Texans have shown up to rally with us in every corner of this state, from Beaumont to El Paso, from Amarillo to Brownsville, and everywhere in between. We have recruited more than 28,000 volunteers who are doing the organizing work all over this state. And we have shattered grassroots fundraising records, all without taking a dime from corporate PACs. This is a people-powered movement to take on this broken, corrupt political system. This is truly a campaign of, by, and for the people. We're not just trying to win an election. We are trying to fundamentally change our politics. My granddad was a Baptist preacher in South Texas, and he told me at an early age that we follow a barefoot rabbi who gave us 2 commandments: love God and love neighbor. My faith teaches me to love my neighbor as myself, not just my neighbor who looks like me, not just my neighbor who prays like me, not just my neighbor who votes like me. I am called to love all of my neighbors the way I love myself. That's what motivated me to go into public service. First as a public school teacher on the west side of San Antonio, and now as a public official. As a legislator, I've brought Democrats and Republicans together to take on corporate special interests, to lower the cost of housing, lower the cost of child care, lower the cost of prescription drugs, including insulin. I am trying to love my neighbor through public policy. I'm trying to make my neighbor's life a little easier and a little better. But that kind of love in our politics has become hard to find. There is something broken in America. Our economy is broken. Our political system is broken. Even our relationships with each other feel broken. And that's because the most powerful people in the world want it that way. The billionaires who own the social media algorithms, who own the cable news networks, who own the politicians fighting on our screens, they want us at each other's throats. They want us focused on how we're different instead of on how we're the same. Because our unity is a threat to their wealth and their power. So they divide us on an hourly basis by party, by race, by gender, by religion. So we don't notice that they are picking our pockets. They are closing our schools. They're gutting our health care. They're raising taxes on all of us while they cut taxes for themselves. The real fight in this country is not left versus right. It's top versus bottom. Those billionaires want us looking left and right at our neighbors instead of looking up at them. They want to keep us from seeing all that we have in common. They want to keep us from realizing that there is far more that unites us than divides us. Because despite our differences, we all really want the same things. A safe neighborhood, a good job with good benefits, a high-quality, well-funded public school, and the ability to see a doctor when we need one. I am tired of being pitted against my neighbor. I'm tired of being told to hate my neighbor. It's been more than 10 years of this kind of politics. Politics as blood sport. Politics as trolling and owning. Politics as total war. It tears families apart. It ends friendships, and it leaves us all feeling terrible all the time. We cannot defeat the politics of division with more division. We can't win their game. We have to change the game. This campaign is rooted in a fierce love for this state, for this country, and most importantly, for all of our neighbors. If you hate politics and you've never voted before, you have a home in this campaign. If you have voted for Democrats, but you're tired of DC Democrats always folding, you have a home in this campaign. And if you voted for Donald Trump, but you are fed up with the extremism and the corruption in our government, you also have a home in this campaign. People across the political spectrum are hungry for a new kind of politics. Not a politics of fear, not a politics of hate, not a politics of division, but a politics of love. A love that can heal what's broken in America. This new kind of politics is being born right here in the Lone Star State. The number of young people who showed up to vote in this election is unprecedented. The number of Texans who have never voted before but showed up in this election is unprecedented. The number of independents and Republicans who voted in this Democratic primary is unprecedented. There is something happening in Texas. The people of this state have given this country a little bit of hope. And a little bit of hope is a dangerous thing. It doesn't matter what happens in this Republican runoff. We already know who we're running against. The billionaire mega donors and their corrupt political system. Not any one politician, not any one political party. We are running against the broken system and the powerful people who broke it. They're scared of the movement we are building. They're going to throw everything they have at us. They're going to call me a radical leftist. They're going to call me a fake Christian. They'll call our movement un-Texan, un-American. They'll call us a threat. The only truth is, we are a threat. We're a threat to their corrupt system. 2,000 years ago, when the powerful few at the top hurt those at the bottom, that barefoot rabbi didn't stay in his room and pray. He walked into the seat of power and flipped over the tables of injustice. To those who love this state, to those who love this country, to those who love our neighbors, it's time to start flipping tables. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being in this fight. God bless y'all. Thank you.
All right, just listening in there, James Talarico rallying the Troops ahead of another campaign heading into November, talking about a new type of politics, also talking about a unified front there from himself and Jasmine Crockett as she conceded earlier this morning. Let's bring back into the conversation right now from the Washington Examiner, Lauren Green. Lauren, we were just speaking ahead of James Talarico taking the stage there for this victory, talking about how unified the Democrats are, and now they have a head start on the Republicans who have a runoff in their primary. How important might that be, and how much backing is Jasmine Crockett going to be behind James Talarico heading into November?
Yeah, I mean, if the runoff does go into these 3 months, the runoff will take place on May 26th, and that provides a good 3-month cushion for Talerico to really get his name out there and campaign. I mean, Republicans have already started going after him. We have seen many Texas members go after him. I've had some texts from some different Republican campaign arms that are already looking at going after him as the Democratic nominee. But let's face it, if these two, if Ken Paxton and Senator John Cornyn are still going after each other for the next 3 months, that does take a lot of money and a lot of time away from campaigning against James Talarico for 3 months, which in politics world is years. So I do think that it does give him a leg up. Today, we have seen some indications that President Trump is going to make an endorsement and that he wants anyone who is not in that endorsement that he makes to step down. The Atlantic reported that that is probably going to be Senator John Cornyn, Senator John Thune, and the NRSC has really been pushing and backing the incumbent there. And so I know that there's been a lot of lobbying going on in Washington to get the president to back Senator John Cornyn. So however that shakes out, I think that there will be some blowback there. I think that if Trump asks Paxton to step down, I talked to a lot of strategists today, the MAGA base is going to be very up in arms that the president is backing an institutionalist. But then I also think that there are a lot of supporters that support Senator Cornyn that are not willing to support Attorney General Paxton just because he is somewhat scandal-ridden. I do think going back to Crockett's campaigning for Talerico, I think that that is going to be so important. We also saw some of that frustration on the Democratic side from Crockett voters towards Talerico today. You saw it across Twitter. I think that some of the supporters were upset with how saying that she's going to campaign with Talerico could really help him amongst Black voters. He did really well among Latino voters. He did really well among young voters, but he really has to get that Black vote to secure the win in November if it gets there.
Yeah, obviously very important. Obviously, he's talking about some of those supporters, no matter who you kind of voted for in this primary, no matter who you kind of pray for, obviously him speaking to his religion as well. And I do want to put up just some of these results that we saw last night now coming in after a little bit of controversy over some of those polls, but Talerico winning by 7 points. On the other side, as you mentioned, very close in margin, John Cornyn, Ken Paxton in this race. And it was on social media that President Trump also noted the fact that he will endorse someone very soon, and it could be a insurmountable endorsement in terms of this. What kind of system are we looking at over the next several months? Because it's an incumbent against a guy that is very for Trump. What other facets of this race heading into May are you looking at?
If he does endorse Senator Cornyn and Attorney General Paxton does step down, all of my focus is going to be on that MAGA base that is against some of those institutionalists. That has been the big problem whenever it comes to support for Cornyn. It's that area of Trump voters that really MAGA base that don't think that they resonate with Cornyn, and they don't like how institutional he is. He's been in the Senate since early 2000s, and so a lot of people see him as a Bush Republican, and a lot of Trump supporters love that Trump is not an institutionalist. They love that he's an outsider that came into DC, and so if he does that DC insider thing by backing Senator Cornyn, I do think that there's going to be some blowback on that side of the party. I talked to some some Republican strategists today who echoed that sentiment. I talked to some Wesley Hunt voters who were expressing frustration around that. I can see frustration in the primary race that went into the runoff. There was a lot of money spent there and no Trump endorsement. So I think that if that Trump endorsement does come and somebody does step down, there will be frustration amongst the MAGA base if the endorsement goes to Senator Cornyn.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Lots to unfold over the next several months. And then as the Democrats getting a head start heading into November with James Talarico as their candidate. Lauren, you've been keeping your eyes mainly on that one tonight, but last night there were several other races. What other races did we kind of transition this segment? What other races were you focused on that stood out most last night?
Well, there was a lot across the state. I went up and talked to some Congressman Crenshaw voters. He ended up losing to a primary challenge to Steve Toth. He was not, Dan Crenshaw was the only incumbent Republican in the House that was not backed by President Trump. And I think that did go to show that Trump endorsements still do go a long way as Trump heads into the lame duck era of his presidency. We look over to San Antonio area. We saw Congressman Tony Gonzalez, who's been plagued by a scandal recently with the affair that he actually just came out today and confirmed on a podcast. He is going to go into a runoff with Herrera, who he was in a runoff with before and narrowly lost by around 350 votes. We go back to Houston. We have a Democrat incumbent against a Democrat incumbent due to redistricting. The newest member of Congress, Christian Menefee, and a very long time Democrat from Houston, Al Green. Their race was extremely close, so we're going to see that runoff in May. And then you look up to Dallas, we have Congresswoman Julie Johnson and then former Congressman Colin Allred, who was the Democratic Senate nominee in 2024, who lost, obviously, and he is not in the Senate now, but they had a race. Colin Allred was up in the polls last night, but neither one of them reached that 50% threshold to not make it to a runoff. So lots of runoffs coming in Texas. We also have one for Attorney General. We have Congressman Chip Roy in that. And so May 26th is going to be another big day in Texas politics for elections.
Deja vu all over again heading into that one. There are a lot of major results. You mentioned some of those. The redistricting effort in Texas was such a high-profile nature. We had a couple Democrats going head-to-head. It was Christian Menefee that took down a long-standing congressman in Al Green. And then, like you mentioned, Julie Johnson, Colin Allred going to a runoff. Was there any larger kind of trend last night that stood out in terms of this? Because Christian Menefee, obviously, a younger candidate, kind of moving in line with that. We saw Julie Johnson and Colin Allred, two very progressives. Was there any larger movement that stood out last night?
I do think that in Houston, specifically in the race with Menefee, I talked to a ton of voters at those polls, and everyone that I talked to said that as much as they loved and respect Al Green, they wanted someone younger. That was really the pattern that I saw whenever I talked to voters in that area. I mean, Al Green came within very close margins of Christian Menefee whenever all of the results started to trickle in. But I do think that is kind of something that these Texas, not even Texas Democrats, but Texas voters across the board are looking for someone new. I mean, we had incumbent Senator John Cornyn get not even 50% of the vote. We saw Representative Dan Crenshaw, he got voted out. I just think that there are a lot of Texas voters that are looking for someone new. And we've seen that in the Menefee district. We've seen that in Crenshaw's district. We saw that in the Texas Republican primary. I mean, we have so many Texas Republicans retiring this year. And then we also look over to Austin. We have longtime Representative Lloyd Doggett also retiring. Texas is really turning a new leaf, and there's a lot of younger names coming in there, regardless of if it happened through not winning, through redistricting, or through retirement.
All right, very good. Lauren Green, a lot to keep up with. You did a great job kind of wrapping that all, putting a bow on it. But we'll see again in May, and I bet before then as well, just kind of get us ready for everything with all those runoffs and so many different races. Thank you again. Appreciate your time here on Live Now.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. All right, great conversation. And the key race last night was that Senate primaries. James Talarico on the Democratic side defeating Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. And then on the Republican side, of course, this was the result last night by 7 points. And then also on the Republican side, heading to a runoff, John Cornyn by 1 point over Ken Paxton. And President Trump on social media saying that the Republican Party, the race in the great state of Texas, I won 3 times, saying he will make an endorsement soon and it will be an insurmountable, saying these endorsements within the Republican Party virtually insurmountable. It is such an honor to say that almost everyone I endorse wins and wins by a lot. So we'll see who he backs in this key primary ahead of the midterm election.